platform fighting genre has to be one of the hardest genres of game to break into, as it's dominated by one game, the same game that created it. A spin-off of the usual fighting genre, Super Smash Bros. 64 released on April 26, 1999, and would be met with positive reviews, becoming a commercial success with 5 million units sold. And while it was a success, the real explosion of popularity for the genre would take place just 2 years later, in late 2001, as Super Smash Bros. Melee would release to overwhelming praise and become a cult classic, the best-selling game on GameCube, officially starting the popularity of the platform fighting genre, with the game getting 3 to 4 more sequels afterwards, depending on who you ask, and plenty of attempted competitors all looking to take a piece of that Smash Bros. Pie, from smaller budget indie games like Brawl Out, Rivals of Aether 1 and 2, and Icons Combat.
Jesus Christ, I don't know what's more generic, that title or these characters.
To fan-made games like Project M and Super Smash Flash, I still don't know how they've never been sued, to high-budget games with crossovers of their own akin to Nintendo's different franchises colliding into one game. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, with a title that's way too long, being one of the first and early on one of the most viable threats to Nintendo's crown, with a similar setup to Smash but making some alterations to attempt to differentiate it, which ultimately just made it worse. And a roster of PlayStation-exclusive characters with some other franchises crossing over, similar to what Nintendo did. Kratos, Sackboy, Ratchet & Clank, Nathan Drake, Sly Cooper, Dante, Raiden, Parappa, Sweet Tooth, Spike, Big Daddy.
Are you sensing a problem here?
Not only was the roster small and using random characters like that one enemy from BioShock, and including glaring omissions like Spyro or the mascot of early PlayStation, but the art style as well really clashed. Look at this screenshot. We have a character that brutally murdered the entire Greek pantheon, standing next to a sack made of yarn, a fat princess, and that's not fatphobia, that's her name, and a flat dog. It doesn't work. But what did work was Brawlhalla in 2014, which weirdly enough is probably the best performing platform fighter aside from Smash. With Ubisoft backing, it's been able to last over a decade now, hundreds of updates, multiple continuing seasons, a large and dedicated community, roster of over 60 characters, including even crossovers from various different franchises. And while it has been successful, it's always been a bit more niche. Meanwhile, Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl no doubt had plenty of mainstream appeal. SpongeBob, Avatar, Garfield, TMNT, who already had their own attempt at the genre, followed by a sequel 2 years later, improving on many of the issues from the first, but both would slowly fall out of popularity and fail to stand anywhere near Smash, and at this point, that franchise had gotten too big to likely ever be fully dethroned. But while that is the case, there was still one more game that would come out around this time. One more game that potentially had one of the biggest shots to become a viable competitor or alternative to Smash: Multiversus. On November 18, 2021, Warner Bros. And Playerfirst Games officially announced Multiversus for the first time after the game had been leaked for months at that point. A 2v2 focused platform fighter with a massive variety of Warner Bros. Different IPs that's imprisoned behind the company's stupidity. DC, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Scooby-Doo, Game of Thrones, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and so many others, which could potentially be added in the future through its live service updates due to its free-to-play formula,
which was the first bad sign.
But at the time, this looked great. A fun cast of characters, fantastic art style that avoids the pitfall that PlayStation fell into, fast, fluid, and snappy-looking gameplay, and a genre that both casual and hardcore audiences loved and were clamoring to get their hands on outside of Nintendo's ecosystem. People were hyped, and their hype would be paid off in the following year, as a closed alpha for the game would begin in May of 2022, followed by an open beta in July of the same year, which you could get early access to if you bought the Founders Pack, allowing you to play the open beta, as well as various other rewards like character unlock tokens, 15 for the standard $40 Founders Pack, 20 for the $60 Deluxe, and 30 for the $100 Premium.
Founders Packs are typically used to fund indie companies, meanwhile Warner Bros. Has this much money.
With the open beta releasing to all in late July to an explosion in popularity, 153,000 people in its first day on Steam alone, the biggest fighting game launch in Steam's history, 10 million players in its first month and 20 million players roughly a month after launch. For all intents and purposes, Multiversus was looking to be a massive success, WB's biggest launch on Steam, and at the time had the capability of being a successful and long-lasting live service game, what every publisher seems to be fucking clamoring for, including WB, as they sacrificed one of their most successful and beloved franchises just to chase that goal and fucking fail. And the live service would start off with Season 1 on August 9th. until it got delayed by 6 days and released on the 15th.
Foreshadowing.
Releasing Rick and Morty, Gizmo, Stripe, and fucking Black Adam of all DC characters because Dwayne the bald fraud show up to fucking work was going through his ego trip phase. And putting not the two most popular and fan favorite characters of this season, Rick and Morty, on the cover art, but Stripe and Black Adam, who would not release until the last 2 weeks of the season. Why is he on the cover? With the characters releasing in a roughly 2-week split throughout the 3-month season, also known as drip feeding content. Season 1 having its grand opening with none of the new characters. Starting on the 15th, releasing the Battle Pass and no new characters until a week later on the 23rd with Morty, and then 2.5 weeks later Gizmo, and then another 2.5 weeks later Rick, then 2.5 weeks after that Stripe, then finally Black Adam on the 31st. The cover stars of season 1 were the last 2 characters to fucking come out, and one of them was Stripe. I am lost. And each of them not being available immediately to the player, but being locked away behind the gold currency, meaning that you couldn't even access the new content released in the live service until you fucking grinded for it. With each character ranging between 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 gold each, which you could get in a handful of ways, from daily missions to battle pass free tiers to simply playing matches, which is likely the most consistent way that majority of players are gonna do it. And how many matches did you need on average to get enough gold to unlock one character? Well, for simplicity's sake, let's say that every character cost 2,000 gold. If that's the case, then you need 80 1v1 matches to reach that goal. A 1v1 match takes roughly 4 minutes on average, meaning 84-minute 1v1 matches would result in a grind of roughly 5 hours to unlock a single character. And with 5 new characters releasing in season 1, it would take roughly 30 hours to unlock all the new characters, and that's not even including the locked base characters. Or you could spend 700 Gleamium, the game's premium currency, to buy each character and bypass that grind, the equivalent of $7. Okay, let's buy 700 Gleamium. Oh, there's only an 1,000 Gleamium bundle. Guess every character is actually $10. The live service really shining through with these tendencies already, but for the most part, every fucking live service game has these shady ass bundle setups, so who cares? And plus, 5 hours per character could be worse. And if you're thinking that, just wait. But for the most part, all this was par for the course for a live service game, and as mentioned before, the game was wildly successful and popular enough for these issues to be looked past as of right now.
Okay, maybe not.
Now, player loss, especially for a live service game, especially at launch, is normal. When a game initially comes out, everyone's excited and flocking to the new trendy big thing. Some people play it, get bored, or get their ass handed to, and move on as the player base falls until it begins to stable out as its core fan base is established. Those lost players may come back from time to time to check out a new season and things like that, but that core base will usually always be there through thick and thin. So a loss of players is normal, but not a 98% loss, and the cause of this is likely a mix of drip feeding content and greedy tendencies, as well as the fighting game genre as a whole. As if you look at majority of fighting games, you can see similar trends, high peaks and quick plummets, because fighting games are fucking annoying, and I can personally attest to this. Where other games can keep casuals engaged through things like teammates carrying them or self-validating excuses like,
yo bro, you fucking suck, man.
You're bottom fragging, asshole.
Fighting games don't have that advantage. If you suck, you fucking suck, and getting your ass beat over and over again hurts your ego, which results in this. The only excuse you could really make is that's bullshit, which honestly would be pretty valid, as this game was fucking bullshit, especially at the time, which definitely did not help with its player count. A broken netcode which seriously hurt the game and made everything feel wildly inconsistent, and not only that, but balance shattering exploits being quickly found, like this game's lack of a hit priority system, meaning that instead of slower, more powerful attacks taking priority over quicker light attacks because they're riskier to pull off, here whichever attack's hitbox lands first will connect, and this game's already broken hitboxes do not help its case, causing competent players who understood this to just spam quick light attacks over and over, never giving a new player who likely only rely on shit like smash attacks a chance. As mentioned before, fighting games already have issues retaining a casual player base due to their brutally competitive nature, but this game had an even harder time not only retaining casuals due to exploits like this, but even retaining hardcore players from the shit like the frustrating netcode issues. All of this mixed with the live service drip feeding and greed likely resulted in this game's early 98% player base plummet. And while that is insane, it wasn't over yet, as this game could have easily survived this plunge as a core hardcore fan base of a couple thousand people is sustainable, exhibit A, B, C, especially considering that we're not even taking the cross-play console fan base into account. This loss wasn't ideal, but the game could have survived as the 1 to 10,000 player core fan base was established. And plus, it's a live service. Season 2 was right around the corner, which surely would result in a spike of players. It wasn't over.
It's over.
If you thought Season 1's drip feeding content was bad for a live service, Season 2 launched with Marvin the Martian, and that's it. And this season would last 7 months. Your live service is about as live as my brain dead uncle. As the season would launch on the 15th, the devs saying that they're teasing one of the characters that would be launching with Season 2, Marvin. He'd release a week later on the 21st. Then a month would go by, would receive balance changes and patch notes. Roughly 1.8 thousand people remain. January and the new year would arrive. More patch notes, 1,300 to 500 people remain. February, patch notes, and it'd be announced that Season 2 is being extended to March 31st. A 4.5 month long season. The game will drop below 1,000 players for the first time. March would be here, more patch notes. The game is now consistently below 1,000, and as the end of the extended season approached, fans assumed that Season 3 would be right around the corner with a host of new characters and content, considering that you've had damn near 5 months with one character, just for it to be announced 4 days before the end of Season 2 on the 27th that Multiversus' open beta was ending and would relaunch next year. Your live service is now less live than my brain dead uncle. An absolutely unprecedented move. Sure, the game was in beta because it said so on the screen, but so was Fortnite. Fortnite, for the entirety of its peak across Chapter 1 and some of 2, was considered early access plastered all over the screen, but you never saw that game shut down for a fucking year because Epic, unlike WB, is competent and realized that if they shut their live service down, they'd kill their fucking game. So instead, they just quietly shifted over from beta to launch. So quietly that majority of people didn't even realize they did it. And Multiversus seemed to be very clearly following that trend, considering that the game had been out for nearly a fucking year at that point, with no signs of it going offline, getting dozens of reviews and a metascore like a full game would, not a fucking beta. Can't find a Black Ops 6 beta metascore anywhere. Getting nominated for Best Fighting Game of the Year and fucking winning like a full game would. Updating it with multiple seasons, characters, balance changes, battle passes, skins, selling $100 bundles and packs just to skip grind like you would a full launch game. 90% of people assumed that this game had fully launched at this point. They had dumped hundreds of dollars, hundreds of hours into the game, getting better, grinding characters, getting them to the max level, unlocking their perks, just for it to be revealed days before a season was supposedly gonna launch that all that work you did, a waste of time. Your ranks are reset and your game is going offline for a year. Bye-bye. Sparking shock, outrage, and a host of refund requests, as it was never stated anywhere on the $100 bundle that WB was shamefully shilly that the game would go offline for a year at any fucking point. Were any refunds given out? Playerfirst Games said that they would take this beta as a learning opportunity.
We're so sorry thousands of you wasted $100 on this game, but we will take this as a learning opportunity while keeping all the money that we made. But promise, we will be better.
No Season 3, no new content coming out after this announcement, as the game would coast by till late June, where the servers would officially be shut down, with no news for the game being heard until a full 9 months later. A child could have been conceived and born in that time frame. As finally in mid-March of 2024, the game would receive a developer update trailer revealing new information and changes made to the launch version of the game, like netcode improvements. There would still be netcode issues for this game's entire lifespan, a shift to Unreal Engine 5, their own single-player PvE mode, Rift similar to Brawl's Subspace, I don't know what the fuck is going on, and Ultimate's World of Light, with a release date of May 28th finally being announced and new information consistently flowing in from that point on, leading to release. In April, gameplay changes being announced, like character models being enlarged to improve visibility, additions to the gameplay like a dash and parry attack for everyone, and new characters being revealed for the game's full launch, the first being the Joker in early May, Banana Guard
Ooh.
a week later on the 17th. This is your relaunch, by the way. All eyes are on you right now. This is where you big out the big guns. This is where you impress everyone. Why are you releasing Banana Guard? And finally, Jason Voorhees a few days before launch, and this is a much better pick. And with those 3 reveals, the game would finally relaunch a full 11 months after the beta initially shut down.
But not a year. We fucking did it last.
And launching in a worse state than the beta. What happened? As May 28th would arrive and Multiversus would return to a player base of 114,000 people. Not as much as its peak, but still a large chunk of returning players, especially if we look at where the game was when it died, coming back to see all the content and changes made to the full launch of the game. The 3 previously mentioned characters all launching date for date with the season, aside from the later added Agent Smith releasing on July 8th. A solid change, not drip feeding content, but every other change was a bit mixed. The larger character models did improve visibility, but made everything feel weirdly zoomed in. Dash and parry attacks for everyone was a negligible alteration, but the combat and gameplay as a whole was seen as a complete downgrade from the beta. Slower and clunkier compared to the quick and snappy beta gameplay, which should be a reverse. How does the full launch play worse than the beta?
Oh yeah, you see all that positive feedback, fucking ignore it. Remove all that shit. All that stuff on there that nobody complained about, remove it.
A change that majority of the players recognized immediately and complained about immediately. This would not be fixed for the rest of the year, but as they would continue playing, these changes would begin to stack up more and more until people realized that this full launch had more removals than additions. Some would be added back or promised to be added back later, so why did you remove them in the first place? Ranked mode, removed. Switching characters in between matches on casual, removed. Post-match stats, removed, but don't worry, they promised to add that back. Every character being unlocked in local play, removed, that was not added back. Leaderboards, removed. Earning battle pass XP outside of challenges was removed. It was eventually added back in through an update, but was done so in a way that was so slow that it would take an estimated 200 wins just to go up one fucking tier. Gold, the free and earnable currency from the beta, was removed and split into 3 fucking currencies as a replacement, now giving us 5 currencies in total. Welcome to mobile gaming. In the beta, we had gold, the free currency, toast, which was rewarded to other players to give you more gold, and glemium, the paid currency, mostly for skins or to skip grinds. With the relaunch, toast remained the same, glemium as well, but gold was swapped for prestige tokens, which you could only get by spending glemium. You buy something with a premium currency, and a small percentage of that glemium gets turned into prestige tokens, which you could spend at the prestige shop with its own set of skins and things like that. So if you're really close to a prestige skin, all you have to do is dump a bunch of money into glemium and buy pointless shit. Perk currency, the second of the 3 new currencies used to unlock perks, which before was unlocked by simply grinding out and leveling up certain characters, which is likely why all character levels were reset from beta to launch. Sorry about that grind. Hopefully you didn't waste too much time grinding out those perks, but please go ahead and rebuy all of them. And finally, fighter currency, the last of the 3 new currencies, used specifically to buy fighters with the price costing usually 3,000 per fighter, inflated from the beta, which ranged from 1,000 to 3,000 gold, now everyone costing the latter, unless you're the Joker, who for some reason costs double at 6,000, meaning that if the grind from the beta was still accurate and everyone took 5 hours to unlock, Joker would be double that at 10 hours. 10 hours for 1 character.
I wish that was the fucking case.
As Twitter user YDo calculated that after roughly 100 minutes of 2v2 PvP gameplay, he gained 130 fighter points, 78 points per hour, and with majority of fighters costing 3,000 fucking fighter points, the average grind per character has been bumped up from 5 hours per character to 38 hours per character. Joker would take 77 hours.
Well, this is done to give players a sense of pride and accomplishment upon unlocking a new character.
Of course, you could buy them instead with glemium to bypass this sense of pride and accomplishment. But you don't have to play the PvP. It's only the mode that 90% of players play fighting games for. Too bad it's the most ineffective way to grind in this game, with the new PvE mode Rifts being the fastest way to unlock characters and gain fighter currency. Too bad the mode is broken, unfun, and intentionally confusing, and even in its own right, a grind-filled mess. Its setup is extremely similar to World of Light from Smash Bros. AI combat encounters with random adjustments made to every encounter for added difficulty. The only difference is that it's 100 times more convoluted than Smash's World of Light. Starting out, you only had 2 difficulties available, easy or experienced. If you wanted to play a harder mode, which gives you the most XP and fastest grind, you'd have to grind so that you could have the privilege to grind, as the only way to unlock the harder difficulties is to level up your gem XP. How do you get gem XP? From loot boxes, giving you completely random amounts of XP for completely random gems, or challenges in the Rift mode, which are the most consistent way to get gem XP. But certain challenges are locked behind specific requirements, like playing or winning with a certain character. And with this season being Joker themed, many of these challenges are centered around the Joker, the most expensive character of season 1. And there is your problem. You likely do not own Joker or any of the other specific characters that the challenge requires you to use, because Shaggy is the only free character that you start with. If only there was a mode that could allow me to unlock these characters quickly. Oh wait, I'm playing that mode. How am I meant to use a certain character while I'm trying to unlock a certain character? But the free roster rotates weekly, so if you're lucky, a challenge in the Rift mode may land on a week where said character is free, unless it's Jason, who's locked behind the premium battle pass and still has challenge requirements, even though you cannot grind for him for free. But even if, by God's grace, you do get a character who's on a challenge for free that week, there are still other challenges that require you to wear skins, which are only available in the shop for Gleamium. All of this just to level up your gem XP so that you can grind for characters faster. Or you can buy the gem XP with Gleamium. At that point, I might as well buy the fucking characters with Gleamium, considering that I already have to spend money to be given the opportunity to grind, when I could just spend money and skip the grind altogether, which is the exact conclusion WB wants you to come to. Or here's a different conclusion. How about I save myself the time and money and stop playing the game instead?
It seems like a lot of people came to that conclusion.
As from launch on May 28th to the end of the season 2 months later on July 23rd, the game lost 95% of its fucking player base, a loss 3% smaller than the 98% loss from the beta.
We fucking did it last.
Something that again was understandable and normal for live service games, especially fighting games, although still not ideal. But a consistent 5,000 people did still play, and 13,000 returned for season 2 to see the new content. Ranked was back after being removed from the beta. Samurai Jack was added to the premium pass, once again locked behind a paywall, awesome. And Beetlejuice was added a month later on August 20th. And that's it. Drip feeding was back. Issues from the first season like character grind and Rifts mode being unbearably grindy remained, and only 2 new characters were added. And while that may sound dead, it actually wasn't, as the live service was holding up fairly well, with events being added every other week or so, with a host of new skins and challenges for players to complete. But the manner in which they were added was a bit predatory, in the same manner that this person is a bit predatory, as events and their skins and challenges would last roughly 2 weeks. Once one event ended, a new one would start with their own host of challenges and rewards, and some of the challenges in the new event would require you to use a reward from the old event. And if you didn't complete the old event, you were essentially locked out of the next event, which would lock you out of the event after that and trigger your internal FOMO, as WB was trying to essentially force you to log into the game every single day and complete their challenges. And if you fall behind even once, your FOMO-riddled brain will be punished with no rewards for the rest of the fucking season. That is fucking brutal. That is dictator cultist leader levels of unyielding loyalty to one fucking game. Although this was improved with season 2, as instead of events directly rewarding you with skins like they did before, they now reward you with event currency, which you could use to buy skins that were associated with that event. And if you didn't like any of those skins, well, then you could instead convert that event currency into either Toast, fighter currency, or even the game's premium currency, Gleamium, for free. Essentially meaning that you could grind for the game's premium currency, which is shockingly generous for a game that has been as predatory as this one thus far.
This feature was removed from Season 3.
By September 17, 2024, and the launch of Season 3, the hype surrounding the game had mostly died out. The initial 100,000 player hype train and 13,000 player Season 2 spike had stopped, as its core fan base was established, at least on Steam, consisting of around 2,000 to 3,000 people that were always playing the game at all times, and another 2,000 players who would come back for big events or updates, as evident by the 5,000 player spike for Season 3, and then average of 2,000 people throughout the rest of it. While it's nothing earth-shattering, it's a solid fan base that's about on par par with the rest of the genre and could allow for the game to coast by from that point on, which is essentially what this season was. As season 3 of Multiversus was more of the same. Fan favorite Powerpuff Girls who had been teased and asked for since the beta were finally released date for date with the season on the 17th and accompanied by another fan favorite, Nubia.
Who?
A character not one fucker knew. Apparently she's from DC. I'm a DC fanboy. Who is Nubia? Added a month later in October as Playerfirst continued their weird trend of having the entire Warner Bros. Library at their disposal. So many IPs, so much potential, so many people to choose from, just to choose random fuckers nobody asked for while Ben 10 is lying in his piss green grave. Same with Lantern. Maybe Multiversus hates this side of the color spectrum. And these characters again being implemented in a manner that was more of the same. Powerpuff Girls in the premium pass and Nubia costing fighter tokens. The only really notable change was the addition of shields added a month after launch, which were implemented fairly poorly, and the announcement that this game had cost Warner Bros. $100 million fucking dollars.
Uh-oh.
Something that seemed to light a fire under Playerfirst's ass, as within a day they announced season 4, which for the first time since launch seemed like they were actually trying shit and weren't just on autopilot. 2 fan favorite characters from their respective IPs, Raven and Marceline, a brand new multiplayer mode, 2 separate battle passes to grind through, and the most hype, a brand new feature called the Fighter Road, an overhaul for the 3rd time on how you unlock different characters in the game. No longer using a form of currency, but simply selecting who you would like to grind for and playing matches towards unlocking that character. An amazing sounding addition that fans had been asking for since the fucking beta, all launching on November 12th, 2024, and it was too good to be true. The new mode, Arena Mode, was a roguelike style mode using unlockable perks, which was generally considered to be fun, but rewarded you with prestige tokens, which had previously only been handed out if you spent Gleamium, and due to the prestige tokens now being grindable, earnable, and more freely available, prices in the store have been inflated. The 2 battle passes were just 1 battle pass split in half, one of which ending early to create a heightened sense of FOMO, and both of them having less meaningful content in the 2 of them than if there had been just 1. The only good thing that you could say about these 2 was neither Raven or Marceline was locked behind the premium tier, thus being paywall for 2 months, but instead were both locked behind the fighter road at the very end, which admittedly was an improvement from the old grind in the same way that being punched in the face is an improvement over being shot in the lung. I'd prefer to not get punched, but it's better than being shot. With the grind being split up into multiple tiers or pages, each tier with 3 characters to choose from, you choose one of the 3 characters and grind towards 15,000 fighter XP, which replaced the fighter currency. Hope you weren't close to unlocking anyone with that currency last season. Feel free to restart the grind here, with a PvP match giving you 100 XP per match and 50 more if you win, at best 150 XP per match, and with each character costing 15,000 XP, that means if you win every single match, it would take 100 matches in total to unlock 1 character, with every match taking roughly 4 minutes. That's roughly 6.5 hours of grind per character, which isn't great, but I'd rather be punched in the face than shot in the lung. And after unlocking that character, being moved to the next tier where you get to choose between 3 other select characters and continuing through the tiers so you have everyone in the game. And while this grind is shorter, it also completely strips away your freedom of choice. While the original system was grindy,
Which is an understatement.
you at least had the freedom to pick and choose whoever you wanted to unlock first. Here, you're locked to 3 select characters and have to pick one before moving on to 3 other select characters, meaning that if you're only interested in 1 character, like the brand new Raven, for example, and you only downloaded this game during season 4 because you're a mega fan of Raven and you want to play as Raven, well, tough luck, because she's at the very end of the fighter road with no other way to unlock her, meaning in order to play as the only person you downloaded this game for, you'd have to grind through 7 hours each of 32 other fuckers you couldn't care less about until you finally get her, meaning that unlocking the newest character would take roughly 3,000 matches if you win every single one. And with each match taking roughly 4 minutes, that is a grind of roughly 200 hours. Or you could buy her with 1,000 Gleamium.
Guess every character really was $10.
A month after this season launched, the player count dipped below 1,000 for the first time in its full launch history. 10 days would go by, and then it happened again, and again, and again, and again. 9 days in a row until it finally went back up to over 1,000 for 2 days, and dipped below 1,000 again for another week. But there was hope. Season 5 was right around the corner, planned to launch on January 21st, 2025, until it got delayed to February 4th. Last time a season was delayed during the beta, the game shut down. After not even a year on the market, Multiversus was already over, spurned by a host of technical issues, failed and empty promises, absurdly offensive grinds, and extremely predatory monetization. The potential that this game held, which was a lie, and the hype that had accompanied it was all for naught, as WD's one potentially successful, one genuinely good live service game was killed by their own greed and incompetence. The game was announced to shut down on the 31st, with the studio being shut down as well shortly afterwards. Go fuck yourself, Warner Bros. Giving the game a lifespan of 367 days,
which is 2 days longer than a year. We fucking did it!
with Season 5 coming out on February 4th, releasing Aquaman and Lola I May Be Attracted to Furries Bunny date for date with the season, and in a truly cruel twist of fate, become the most well-received season yet, with both characters being released on the same day for free, Lola as a login bonus and Aquaman on the first year of the free pass, and Playerfirst having updated the gameplay at the launch of the season to finally fix the issues that people have been complaining about since launch. The slower pace of the gameplay finally being sped back up to the beta level. The game was actually getting praise for the first time as fans were actually enjoying it. It's too bad that this was done 4 days after the game was announced to die, with in-game purchases being disabled shortly after, leftover character tokens that had been unused because not enough fucking characters had released in this scam of a founders pack were converted into Gleamium that you could use to buy skins on this dying game, with every skin that had ever come out except for elusive skins, because we have to create artificial rarity on a dead game, being available for purchase in the shop and would not be available once the servers are offline. I repeat, even when the servers go offline and it is impossible for WB to make money off these skins, they will still lock them away and not let us use them locally for free. This is just plain cruel at this point. But at the very least, every character that had come out during the game's lifespan would be available for all to use locally once the servers had shut off, with the player numbers for the game slowly bleeding out as the death date of May 30th approached. But to leave things off on a slightly positive note, hashtag Save Multiversus trended after the announcement of the game's shutdown, and multiple projects have begun attempting to revive the game's servers once they officially go offline. So despite official support of the game coming to an end, there is still a potential underground community that could continue to thrive if things work out. That is, at least if Warner Bros. Allows it. Will they?
Warner, what are you typing?
DMCA takedown.